The Sociopath Next Door, by Martha Stout, Ph.D. Introduction. He was a boy named Skip, brilliant and handsome, everyone said. The kind of child who seemed destined for great things. His family had a vacation cottage by a small, quiet lake, and it was there, during the warm Virginia summers, that Skip discovered his favorite game. He was only 8 years old the first time. He'd take a net from the fishing shed and easily capture the big, bulging bullfrogs from the muddy banks. He'd hold them down, and with a pair of scissors, he'd stab their soft underbellies. Then, he'd turn them over and watch their jelly-like eyes go dead as they bled out. He'd hurl their little bodies into the lake, yelling insults as they flew through the air. But stabbing them got boring. By the next summer, he had a new plan. He bribed an older friend to buy him a variety pack of fireworks from a state where they were legal. He chose a set with small firecrackers, the perfect size to fit inside a bullfrog's mouth. That summer, he'd capture a frog, shove a firework into its mouth, light the fuse, and throw it high into the air. He'd watch as it exploded in a magnificent display of blood, goo, and colored lights. Sometimes, he'd even bring his 6-year-old sister down to the lake to watch his genius, just to see her scream hysterically and run back to the house in terror. His parents heard the explosions, but they'd learned long ago that Skip was a boy who could not be controlled. They just turned up the music in the library to drown out the noise. This boy, Skip, grew up. He never ended up in prison. In fact, he became more successful than anyone could have imagined. Richer than a king, feared and respected in the world of international business. A husband, a father, a leader of his community. And through it all, he never once felt a single pang of guilt. What if I told you that this emptiness, this complete lack of conscience, isn't the mark of a rare monster from a horror film? What if it's a condition that affects 1 in every 25 people living among us? Your neighbor, your coworker, your boss, even a family member. They look just like us, they talk like us, and they walk among us, but they are playing an entirely different game? A game without rules, without empathy, and without guilt. Today, we journey into the chilling and essential book, The Sociopath Next Door, by Dr. Martha Stout. Dr. Stout, a clinical psychologist and former instructor at Harvard Medical School, spent over 25 years working with the survivors of trauma, and in doing so, she uncovered a terrifying pattern: the profound and lasting damage caused by a small, invisible portion of our population who have no conscience. This isn't just a book about bad people. It's a guide to understanding a fundamental division in the human race that is more significant than intelligence, race, or gender. By the end of our time together, you will understand what conscience truly is, how to recognize the person who has none, and most importantly, how to protect yourself and the people you love from them. This is the secret world of the sociopath next door, and learning to see it is one of the most important lessons you will ever learn. Book summary. Let's start with a simple question, but one that's surprisingly hard to answer. What is conscience? We talk about it all the time. My conscience wouldn't let me do it, we say. Or, he has no conscience. But what is it, really? Is it that little voice in your head that tells you right from wrong? Is it a fear of getting caught? Is it about upholding your honor or your reputation? The author invites us to consider a story. Let's call him Joe. Joe is a young, ambitious lawyer. He's running late for the most important meeting of his career. He's been preparing for days, and everything is on the line. He's speeding, clenching his teeth, maybe even running a few red lights. He's got to make it. And just as he's a few blocks away, a sickening thought hits him. He forgot to feed his dog, Rebecca. Joe's going on a business trip right after the meeting and won't be home for almost 2 days. The dog has no food, and maybe no water. Now, Joe knows the dog won't starve in a day and a half, but he'll be miserable. And what about the water? How long can a dog go without water? Joe's mind races. He can go to the meeting and miss his flight. He can skip the meeting, feed the dog, and still make his flight. He can try to ignore it, but the thought of his dog, who adores him unconditionally, waiting alone and thirsty, it's agonizing. Just a few blocks from his office, Joe pulls his car over, calls his secretary to say he won't be at the meeting, turns the car around, and drives home to feed his dog. Why? Why would an ambitious man sacrifice a huge career opportunity for an animal that can't even speak, an act that no one will ever see or reward him for? It's not just about fear of what the neighbors might think. It's not just about protecting his self-image as a good person. Dr. Stout tells us that the real reason is much simpler and much more profound. Joe loves his dog. He has an emotional attachment to him. And that is the true heart of conscience. Conscience is not a list of rules. It's not a fear of punishment. Psychologically speaking, conscience is a sense of obligation that is built on our emotional bonds with others. Whether it's a person, an animal, or even an idea, conscience is woven from the threads of love, empathy, and connection. It's what makes us feel good when we help someone and what causes us that deep, gut-wrenching pain when we let someone down. The author calls it the seventh sense, an emotional compass that most of us are born with. It evolved later than our 5 physical senses, and even later than our 6th sense of intuition. And it is not universal. For 96% of us, this 7th sense guides our lives so automatically that we barely notice it's there. But for the other 4%, 1 in 25 people, it is completely absent. So let's try an exercise. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, what it would be like to have no conscience at all. Imagine feeling no guilt or remorse, ever, for anything you do. Imagine feeling no concern for the well-being of anyone, not strangers, not friends, not even your own family. Imagine a life without a single moment of shame, no matter how selfish, lazy, or harmful your actions are. And here's the most important part. Imagine you can hide this from everyone. Because everyone else assumes that all human beings have a conscience, it's effortless to pretend you do too. You are free from all internal restraints. Your only limits are the external ones, the risk of getting caught. What would you do with this secret, terrifying freedom? The answer, the author says, depends on your other ambitions. If you are brilliant and crave power, you might go into business or politics. You would pursue your career with a cold passion, unburdened by morality. You'd lie to people who trust you, ruin colleagues, marry for money, and steamroll over anyone who gets in your way. And you would do it all with the exquisite freedom of a person who feels absolutely nothing for the people you harm. You could become unimaginably successful. Or maybe you're ambitious, but not quite a genius. You resent the world for not recognizing your specialness. You might become a teacher, a lawyer, or a coach, not to help people, but to have power over small, vulnerable groups. You'd bully the people under your thumb, not for any real purpose, but for the thrill of it. Making people jump gives you an adrenaline rush. It's fun. Most invigorating of all is bringing down people who are smarter, more attractive, or more morally admirable than you are. It's existential vengeance, and without a conscience, it's incredibly easy to do. Or maybe you have no ambition at all. Your only desire is to not have to work. You can live off handouts from relatives and friends. People might call you lazy or depressed, but they will never guess the truth, that you literally do not have a conscience. You never feel irresponsible or embarrassed. To get people off your back, you might pretend to feel ashamed, adopting a lifeless expression and talking about how rotten you feel. You notice that people with a conscience feel guilty for bothering someone they think is depressed. In fact, they often feel obligated to take care of that person. And so you find someone, a partner, a friend, who is reliably conscience-bound, and you let them finance your life of leisure. These people are real. They have a name. Mental health professionals call this condition antisocial personality disorder, but it's more commonly known as sociopathy. It's not just about being a criminal. In fact, most sociopaths are not in prison. The clinical definition includes traits like deceitfulness, manipulativeness, impulsivity, irritability, and a lack of remorse. But beyond this dry list, there are other, more chilling characteristics. Sociopaths often have a glib, superficial charm, a kind of glow or charisma that makes them seem more interesting, more intense, or sexier than everyone else. It's an animal magnetism, the predatory stare of a hunter that can be both captivating and terrifying. They crave stimulation and take huge risks, socially, financially, and legally, and they are masters at convincing others to take those risks with them. They are pathological liars, they live parasitically off others, and they show a breathtaking callousness. Any affection they claim to have is hollow. Their marriages, if they have them, are loveless and one-sided. A partner is a possession, and losing one brings on anger, but never sadness. This is the internal world of the sociopath. It is a world of ice people, as the author calls them. And to truly understand them, we must look at their lives up close. Let's go back to Skip, the boy who blew up frogs. As we know, Skip didn't end up in prison. With his charm and his family's influence, he got into a good boarding school and then a prestigious university. He figured out early that the business world was a game he could master easily. At 26, he joined a corporation that made mining equipment. He had intense blue eyes and a stunning smile, and he seemed magical at motivating people. In reality, he found that manipulating educated adults was no harder than convincing a childhood friend to smuggle fireworks. Lying was as easy as breathing. He was chronically bored, and the high-stakes risks of the corporate world were the only things that gave him a thrill. In just a few years, he made his company, Erica, a global powerhouse. The founder was so enchanted with Skip that he gave him a Ferrari as a corporate gift. Skip privately thought the man was a fool. At 30, he married Juliet, the beautiful daughter of a billionaire. He saw his father-in-law as a ticket to everything, and he saw his new wife as a sweet, respectable woman who would be an attractive accessory on his arm and, most importantly, keep her mouth shut about his endless affairs and lack of responsibility. A week before the wedding, Skip's own mother, weary and defeated, asked him, "This marriage, do you really need to do this to her life?" Skip just grinned and replied, "We both know she'll never know what hit her." He became president of Erica's international division, had 2 daughters to complete his disguise as a family man, and brought in tens of millions of dollars for the company. Of course, there were problems. Employees complained he was vicious. A secretary sued him for breaking her arm when he tried to force her to sit on his lap. The company settled out of court. $50,000 was nothing. Skip was super Skip, and he was worth the upkeep. When asked about the incident privately, Skip said, "She's insane. She broke her own arm. She struggled with me. The stupid bitch." Skip is the perfect example of a successful sociopath. He is rich, respected, and feared. But what is truly wrong with this picture? It is this: Skip has no emotional attachments to other people. None at all. He is as cold as ice. His mother is there to be ignored. His sister, to be tormented. Women are for sexual plunder. His father exists only to one day die and leave him money. His wife and children are camouflage, props for his public image. His greatest talent isn't business, it's his ability to conceal the true emptiness of his heart. So what does a person like Skip want? Most of us are driven by our relationships. Our wishes, our dreams, our worries, they are all populated by people. Our lives are a rich tapestry of emotional intrigue, romance, nurturing, and connection. Without these primordial attachments, what is left? For the sociopath, life is reduced to a giant game of chess. Other human beings are nothing more than pawns, to be moved around, used as shields, or sacrificed. The only thing Skip really wants, the only thing that gives him a thrill, is to win, to dominate, to bend others to his will. The frogs died when he wanted them to die. His sister screamed when he wanted her to scream. And now, he plays the same game on a global scale. He can make billionaires jump and laugh at them behind their backs. This is the essence of sociopathic desire. When emotional connection is absent, all that remains is the cold, empty contest for power. But not all sociopaths are high-flying corporate predators like Skip. Some are far more subtle, and in many ways, far more insidious. Let's meet Doreen Littlefield. To the world, Doreen is a clinical psychologist at a psychiatric hospital. She's known for being kind, caring, and deeply dedicated to her patients. The secretary on her unit, Ivy, often says, "That has got to be the nicest person in the world." But this is all an elaborate disguise. Doreen is what the author calls a covetous psychopath. She doesn't crave money or power on a grand scale. Her driving force is envy. She believes life has cheated her, and she feels an intense, secret pleasure in taking from others what she feels she lacks. Not their possessions, but their happiness, their success, their peace of mind. Her greatest joy lies in secretly causing destruction in other people's lives. And her primary target is her colleague, Dr. Jackie Rubenstein. Jackie is brilliant, beautiful, and beloved by her patients. Doreen despises her so much she fantasizes about killing her, but since she can't get away with that, she settles for something else. Her weapon is a young man named Dennis, one of Jackie's patients. Dennis suffers from severe paranoid schizophrenia. His sense of reality is fragile, and he trusts no one. But Jackie has worked miracles with him, forging a genuine therapeutic bond. Dennis adores her and, for the first time in years, is getting better. He feels ready to leave the hospital. Doreen is Dennis's administrator, and she knows he is coming to her office to discuss his release. She sits behind her desk, locks in his nervous gaze with a maternal smile, and begins her work. "I hear you've been feeling much better," she says warmly. Dennis agrees, telling her that Jackie thinks he's ready to go home and see her as an outpatient. Doreen looks at him with a puzzled, compassionate expression. "Really?" she says softly. "That's not what she told me." A visible shudder runs through Dennis. Doreen comes out from behind her desk and sits next to him. She sighs a heavy, theatrical sigh. "What Dr. Rubenstein told me," she says, her voice full of false sympathy, "was that she was sure you were much sicker now than when you came in. And as for outpatient therapy, she made it very clear that she'd never agree to see you outside of the hospital. She said you were much too dangerous." In that moment, something in Dennis breaks. The one person in the world he trusted has, in his mind, betrayed him in the most horrific way imaginable. He becomes stone still, like a statue, his mind plunged back into the darkest depths of his paranoia. Doreen, wearing her gravest expression, calls for assistance. 2 large attendants arrive, and she signs the order to have Dennis transferred to a locked ward. As he's led away, Doreen feels a rush of satisfaction. Jackie Rubenstein has just lost her miracle patient. Better yet, Jackie, being the conscientious person she is, will blame herself. She will think she missed something, said something wrong. She will take the rap. So much for Dr. Rubenstein, the miracle worker. The most terrifying part of Doreen's story is her disguise. For nearly a decade, she hides in plain sight among intelligent, caring professionals. Why don't they see her? Because we don't expect it. We do not expect to see a person, especially a psychologist, direct such a vicious, unprovoked vendetta against a colleague by torturing a vulnerable patient. Her actions are so outlandish, so gratuitously mean, that we refuse to believe they were intentional. And so her true nature remains invisible. Even her credentials are a lie. She has no PhD, no license. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology. She got her job with glowing references from 2 prominent men she had seduced. The hospital never checked beyond that. After all, who would lie about something like that? The stories of Skip and Doreen are dramatic, but many sociopaths operate on an even quieter, more personal scale. They are not sharks or secret destroyers. They are parasites. Let's look at Luke. Sydney, a brilliant and accomplished professor, met Luke when she was 35. He was handsome, intelligent, and soft-spoken. He brought her flowers, told her they were soulmates, and treated her better than anyone ever had. Sydney, who described herself as a frumpy academic, fell deeply in love. She overlooked the red flags. The fact that he lived in a shabby apartment, despite being a well-educated professional. The fact that he had spent his adult life moving from one woman's home to another, never having a place of his own for long. She felt sorry for him. He told her one of his former girlfriends had died in a car crash, and he cried as he told the story. Sydney's heart went out to him. How lonely and sad his life must have been. 6 weeks after they met, Luke moved into Sydney's beautiful house with its swimming pool. They got married. Soon, Sydney was pregnant, and she was overjoyed. And that's when everything changed. The day the baby's crib was delivered, Luke came home and announced he had quit his job. Just like that. It was as if he knew that now, with a baby on the way, he had her trapped. She would have to take care of him. To everyone else, he said he was depressed. He played the part perfectly, looking hangdog and silent whenever others were around. Friends told Sydney that depression in first-time fathers was common, that she needed to be patient and sympathetic. But Sydney knew, deep down, this wasn't depression. He had plenty of energy for things he wanted to do, and he refused to get help. When their son, Jonathan, was born, Luke barely looked at him. The baby was just an annoying bundle of rags that made noise. When Jonathan cried, Luke would get enraged, holding his ears and making tormented faces, as if the baby were crying just to spite him. Sydney was supposed to feel sorry for him. And sometimes, despite everything, she did. So did the babysitter. So did their friends. Poor Luke, they'd say. He's going through such a hard time. But Luke wasn't going through a hard time. He wasn't depressed. He was sociopathic. His only real ambition was to be inert, to avoid work, and to have someone else provide for him. He had married Sydney for her pool and her bank account. He used her dreams of a family to manipulate her. Their son was just an annoyance he tolerated because the baby sealed the deal, ensuring Sydney would stick around. Years passed. They divorced, but Luke never really left. He'd hang around the house every day, using the pool, enjoying the comfortable life Sydney provided. She let him, because she thought it was important for their son to have a father, and she still felt sorry for him. The moment of truth came when Sydney finally decided she had to get him out of her life for good. She'd ask him to leave, and he'd pretend not to hear her. She'd scream at him, threaten to call the police, and that's when he'd play his trump card. One day, by the pool, as she was telling him to get out, he started to cry, real tears. He picked up the pool skimmer and started cleaning the water, the very picture of a suffering martyr who only wanted to help. Their young son, Jonathan, saw his father crying and his own eyes filled with tears. "Oh no," he said. "Poor Daddy. Do we have to make him leave?" And in that moment, Luke looked at Sydney, right in the eyes, and it was a look she had never seen before. A look of pure, cold triumph. It was the look of a gamer who had just won. In that instant, she understood. This was all a game. A control game. And she had lost. So why do we fall for it? Why is conscience so blind to its opposite? The author explains that we are vulnerable because the tools a sociopath uses against us are the very things that hold our society together. First, there is charm, that intense, predatory charisma that is so captivating. We are drawn to it, like moths to a flame, mistaking danger for excitement. Second, they are master actors. They know us far better than we know them. A sociopath can instantly spot a decent, trusting person, a good pawn for their game. They study us, learn how to flatter us, and create a false sense of intimacy. "You and I are so alike," they'll say. And they are experts at faking emotions. Crocodile tears are a sociopath's trademark, deployed perfectly whenever they are about to be cornered. Third, they use seduction. For most of us, a sexual bond involves an emotional tie. For the sociopath, it's just another tool of manipulation, a way to secure allegiance, money, or simply the appearance of a normal life. Fourth, they hide behind roles. We are reluctant to question a doctor, a leader, a parent, or a nice person. We grant the individual the integrity of the role itself, and this makes us blind to the person behind the mask. But the most powerful tool, the one that blinds us more than any other, is our own empathy. Specifically, the sociopath's masterful use of the pity play. The author shares a story from early in her career when she interviewed a swindler, a diagnosed psychopath. She asked him, "What do you want more than anything else in life?" She expected him to say money or staying out of jail. Instead, without a moment's hesitation, he replied, "Oh, that's easy. What I like better than anything else is when people feel sorry for me. The thing I really want is people's pity." At the time, she was mystified. Why would anyone want pity? But after 25 years of listening to victims, she understood. Pity is carte blanche. Good people will let a pathetic individual get away with almost anything. When we pity someone, our defenses go down. The combination of consistently bad behavior with frequent, desperate appeals for your sympathy is the closest thing you will ever get to a warning sign tattooed on a sociopath's forehead. Skip deserved sympathy because he couldn't help breaking someone's arm. Doreen was a poor, overworked soul who was too sensitive for her job. Luke was a depressed father going through a hard time. From Prohibition gangster Al Capone, who called himself a public benefactor, to death camp guards who complained about how the smell of the crematoriums made it hard for them to eat their sandwiches, the pity play is the sociopath's most reliable and insidious weapon. When we are confronted by this behavior, we often experience something called gaslighting. Like the wife in the classic film Gaslight, we are made to feel like we are going insane. When you suspect a sociopath, you try to explain their behavior to others, but their actions are so bizarre, so motiveless from a normal person's perspective, that you can't come up with a rational explanation. Why would a successful psychologist torture a patient just to hurt a colleague? Why would a beloved father secretly be a drug dealer and a murderer? The questions are so bewildering that you begin to doubt your own perceptions. You think you must be exaggerating, or misunderstanding. You feel crazy, and so, you keep quiet. This is made worse by the fact that good people are almost never sure they are right. We question ourselves constantly. We understand that there are shades of gray. We assume there's no such thing as a person who is 100% bad. But while that may be philosophically true, psychologically, it's a dangerous assumption. Because there are people who have an intervening sense of constraint, and there are people who do not. And to fail to see the difference is to put yourself, and everyone you care about, in peril. It's not just individuals we have to worry about. Sometimes, the sleep of conscience can affect entire societies. The author points to the famous experiments conducted by Stanley Milgram in the 1960s. Milgram wanted to see how far ordinary people would go in obeying an authority figure, even when it violated their own conscience. He set up an experiment where a teacher was told to administer electric shocks to a learner in another room every time the learner made a mistake. The shocks increased in intensity, all the way up to a level marked danger, severe shock. The learner, who was an actor, would grunt, then complain, then shout in pain, then scream in agony, and finally, fall silent. The authority figure, a man in a white lab coat, would calmly instruct the teacher to continue. The experiment requires that you continue, he would say. How many people do you think would go all the way to 450 volts? Most people predict only a tiny fraction, a few sadistic individuals. The terrifying result? Nearly two-thirds of the participants, 62.5%, obeyed the authority figure and administered the full range of shocks, right to the very end. These were not monsters. They were ordinary, decent people, teachers, salesmen, laborers. They would sweat, they would protest, they would hold their heads in their hands. But they would continue. Milgram's conclusion was chilling. A substantial proportion of people will do what they are told to do, irrespective of the content of the act, so long as the command comes from a legitimate authority. This is the vulnerability that sociopathic leaders have exploited throughout history. They use fear to hypnotize a group's conscience. They label an outgroup as less than human, and then they rely on our deeply programmed instinct to obey authority. Our conscience isn't gone, it's just been put to sleep. So, where does this condition come from? Is it nature or nurture? The science points to a disturbing answer. It's both. Heritability studies on twins suggest that sociopathic traits are about 50% genetic. There appears to be a biological predisposition. Brain imaging studies have even shown that sociopaths process emotional words differently from the rest of us. For them, words like love or hate trigger the same neutral brain response as words like table or chair. It's as if they can learn the words, but they can never hear the music. But if it's only 50% genetic, what about the other 50%? The obvious answer would be childhood abuse or neglect. But surprisingly, the research doesn't fully support this. While abuse is toxic and causes many problems, it doesn't consistently lead to the core trait of sociopathy, the complete absence of conscience. The author suggests that the most powerful environmental factor may be culture itself. Individualistic societies, like ours in the West, which value personal achievement and domination, may inadvertently create a perfect camouflage for the sociopath. Their me-first attitude blends in with our social expectations. In more group-centered cultures, like those in East Asia, sociopathy is remarkably rare. A culture that relentlessly emphasizes our interconnectedness may teach a born sociopath to at least cognitively understand their obligations to others, even if they can't feel them. With all of this in mind, what can we do? How do we, the conscience-bound, deal with the guiltless? The author gives us 13 rules for survival. These are not just tips, they are a shield for your psyche. 1. The first and most difficult rule is to accept the bitter pill. Some people literally have no conscience. They do not look like monsters. They look like us. 2. Trust your instincts over the role a person plays. If your gut tells you a doctor, a leader, or a parent is not right, listen to your gut. 3. Practice the rule of threes. One lie or broken promise can be a misunderstanding. 2 can be a serious mistake. But 3 lies says you're dealing with a liar. And deceit is the cornerstone of conscienceless behavior. Cut your losses and get out. 4. Question authority. Remember the Milgram experiment. Just because someone is in charge doesn't mean they are right. 5. Suspect flattery. It is counterfeit charm, and it almost always involves an intent to manipulate. 6. Redefine your concept of respect. Do not mistake fear for respect. True respect should be reserved for those who are strong, kind, and morally courageous. A person who profits from frightening you is none of these. 7. Do not join their game. Resist the temptation to compete with a sociopath, to outsmart them, or even to banter with them. You will only be reducing yourself to their level and distracting yourself from what is truly important: protecting yourself. 8. The best way to protect yourself is to avoid them. Refuse all contact. This is the one time a psychologist will recommend avoidance. You will not hurt their feelings. They do not have any feelings to hurt. 9. Question your tendency to pity too easily. If you find yourself constantly pitying someone who consistently hurts you and others, you are almost certainly dealing with a sociopath. 10. Do not try to redeem the unredeemable. Second chances are for people who have a conscience. Your mission is not to fix them. Your mission is your own life. 11. Never agree to help a sociopath conceal their true character. Please don't tell is the trademark plea of child abusers, thieves, and sociopaths. Other people deserve to be warned. 12. Defend your psyche. Do not let one, or even a string of them, convince you that humanity is a failure. Most human beings do possess conscience. Most are able to love. 13. And finally, living well is the best revenge. In the end, after exploring this dark world, the author brings us back to a question posed by a colleague after the September 11th attacks. The man, a good and caring therapist, was overwhelmed by the evil in the world and said wearily, "You know, sometimes I wonder, why have a conscience? It just puts you on the losing team." Does it? Looking at the lives of people like Skip, Doreen, and Luke, it might seem so. They pursue their desires unburdened by guilt, but their lives are a losing game. Their constant need for stimulation leads to chronic boredom. Their inability to form genuine bonds leaves them isolated. Their games of domination almost always end in self-destruction, whether it's financial ruin, a prison sentence, or a lonely, burned-out existence. They are, in effect, failed lives. They cannot love. They have no higher values. They are never comfortable in their own skin. But the most compelling reason to choose conscience is not the failure of sociopathy. It is the deep and beautiful gift that comes only inside the wrappings of conscience: the ability to love. Love and conscience are inseparable. Conscience is the embodiment of love, a sense of responsibility born from our emotional attachments. If you have no conscience, you can never truly love. All that is left is a thin, cold will to possess. Yes, having a conscience means you may never be able to do exactly as you please. You may suffer painful bouts of guilt. You may have to work hard and make sacrifices. You may never be the dictator of a small country. But you will be able to look at your children asleep in their beds and feel that unbearable surge of awe and thanksgiving. You will be able to keep the people you love alive in your heart long after they are gone. You will have genuine friends. You will go through your life fully aware of the warm, confusing, infuriating, and joyful presence of other human beings. And along with your conscience, you will be given the chance to take the largest risk of all, the risk to love. Commentary. After spending time with a book like The Sociopath Next Door, it's easy to feel a little paranoid, a little more suspicious of the world around you. And in some ways, that's part of its purpose: to wake us up to a reality we've been trained to ignore. But the book's most powerful and lasting message isn't one of fear. It's one of profound appreciation for the very thing that makes us vulnerable: our conscience. Dr. Stout's work is a masterclass in revealing the invisible. She shows us that what we call evil isn't always a dramatic, monstrous force. Sometimes, it's the quiet, smiling emptiness in the person sitting next to us. The most brilliant and unsettling insight for me is the idea that the sociopath's most effective weapon is our own goodness. Our instinct to trust, our capacity for pity, our respect for authority, and our politeness. These are the very tools they use to manipulate and control us. The book teaches us that protecting ourselves doesn't mean becoming hard and cynical. It means becoming wiser. It means learning to listen to that quiet, primal instinct that tells us when something is deeply wrong, even when we can't logically explain why. In a world that often seems to reward ruthless ambition, this book serves as a crucial reminder of where true strength and happiness lie. The life of a sociopath, stripped of all its charm and illusion, is a tragedy. It is a life of chronic boredom, of fleeting thrills in an endless, meaningless game. It's a life devoid of the one experience that gives human existence its depth and richness: love. They can mimic it, they can use it as a weapon, but they can never feel it. And that is a prison far more confining than any physical jail cell. So, how do we take these powerful lessons and apply them to our own lives, starting today? It really boils down to a few simple, courageous shifts in perspective. First, learn to trust your ick reaction. That's the author's term for our natural sense of moral outrage. It's that feeling you get when you see someone being really mean. We are often taught, especially as we grow up, to suppress this feeling, to not rock the boat, to be polite at all costs. This book gives you permission to honor that feeling. When your gut screams that someone's behavior is wrong, listen. It's not you being judgmental, it's your seventh sense trying to protect you. Second, become a student of the pity play. This is perhaps the most practical tool the book offers. From now on, when you encounter someone whose life is a trail of broken promises and hurt people, but who constantly frames themselves as the victim, a bright red flag should go up in your mind. True misfortune deserves our sympathy, but a consistent pattern of destructive behavior paired with a demand for pity is the sociopath's signature move. Learning to see it is like gaining a superpower. And finally, choose your game. The sociopath is trapped in the game of domination, but the rest of us have a choice. We can spend our lives chasing external validation, power, status, the approval of others, or we can play a different game entirely. We can play the game of connection, of meaning, of love. This book makes it profoundly clear that the second game is the only one worth winning. The irony is that by focusing on our obligations to others, we find our own deepest happiness. That was our deep dive into The Sociopath Next Door by Martha Stout. We've explored the main ideas today, but I have to be honest with you. A summary is like looking at a photograph of a magnificent landscape. You can see the shape of the mountains and the color of the sky, but you can't feel the wind on your face or smell the forest after a rain. The real magic happens when you read the book for yourself. It's in the quiet moments when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with your own experiences in a way you never expected. This summary is a map to help you decide if this is a journey you want to take. If anything we've talked about today has made you think, or wonder, or even feel a little uneasy, then I urge you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see the people around you and the world itself. A link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable and want to continue exploring the ideas that shape successful and meaningful lives, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to Billionaire's Bookshelf. It helps us grow and ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning together.